And we're on. All right.
What's
Hey,
up, Garrett?
buddy.
How you doing?
I'm
I'm
good.
looking at my notes over here. I was just taking notes on the release. I mean, because I hadn't heard the final thing. By the way, the cover is fabulous. I love the cover.
So I've got a friend, Thomas Murray, who's a stunning painter and sketch artist, a drawer, and I commissioned him to do that. And in exchange, we exchanged. I helped him with some music he was working on, gave some insight, and peeked around recordings, and he painted that for me. And it's been on exhibit in, I think, a gallery in Orlando and maybe a couple other places. But he's brought it around and showed it. But
It's kind of image that you just keep looking at it and sort of wondering what lens or what focal point you're supposed to be at, and I like that a lot about it, and I think that's appropriate for the record in a lot of very good ways. So.
what I love about it is like, I mean, sometimes we can make the art and then infer meaning, or like all of a sudden the meaning can
Thanks for
present
using
itself.
infer correctly, by the way. Thank you.
What's that?
Thanks for using infer correctly. A lot of people will use it wrong.
Yeah, okay.
And onward, sorry.
No, but it's almost like in that cover, all the naked bodies, like that is human in its purest form, just a naked body out in nature. But it's like Icarus could be any one of us if we uh, shoot too far without guidance or ignore the sage advice, like that whole parable. But
And
like,
that's honestly the entire record. And by the
yeah,
way, I don't know if it's been released or if the art is final or whatever, but I would call it rather a song cycle than a musical.
yeah.
It really was never intended to be a musical. And that a musical implies that there's a narrative in a way, of some sort. And this is
Mhm.
really just a pure song cycle. I think it's for people to make of what they will, especially if they're talented. And that's sort of where you came in. I mean, you just appeared and you decided to kind of attack and dissect and metabolize this thing. And that's what's so well, that's the really honorable thing to me. I mean, I feel so grateful that you just thought to do it, but also I took some notes. I listened just now again to the whole piece, and
All right. Wow.
I think you should also say based on a work by. I don't think you should say a work by. I think at this point it's based on a work by. It's fair to say that, as long as you give me credit for what you're basing it on. I think that's more fair to you and more correct.
Hmm. The art is what the art is. It's coming out in a week, and I think it's past alteration at that point. But
Well,
the
if it does well or whatever, if there's another venue where this is being put out there, like live or whatever, just go ahead and say that if we can deal with that. But that's what I think is more fair, don't you? I mean, I just
Sure.
listened to it carefully again, and I feel like, look, yeah, I provided a lot of the sort of cement and rebar here, but geez, it's a very different flight of fancy, and that's what's great about it.
Well, cool. I will uh, use that phraseology or frame it that way. You're right though. The fact that it's a song cycle allows the ingredients to be they're not tied to any truth of a narrative, meaning someone like me can take way more creative license with it because it doesn't have to be tied to anything, you know? Because any other way of doing that to something with a narrative structure, it just becomes only a fraction of the whole. Uh, maybe. I don't know.
I totally, totally.
Yeah.
So, how do you want to do this? I mean, I'm happy to respond. I have a couple candidates. You had said maybe we would talk about um, a given tune or two tunes that would be emblematic or instructive in terms of, what you did to this material, how I feel about it, all the things you brought up on the phone. Like, I've got a couple candidates for things, two, three things that I think will I'd be able to speak on in terms of, my point of view, and I'm very interested in yours because this is like my favorite thing. I mean, let me just start with the word timbre because timbre really is so emotional. Like if you take "Come to Jesus," the way you treated "Come to Jesus" on this thing, the timbre is really very character based. If it isn't, it's uncannily thoughtful and insightful about what's going on in that song, which is a very painful song. And but also you seem to have intuited that from the melody, and you made this. How did you make that sound?
So uh Artie played the melody on that piece. Artie's the bassist. I had him perform it octave up with a whammy pedal, and then with
That
what
makes so much sense.
and then whatever effects he chose to use, I kind of nudged him to make it like however you can make it. Overdriven isn't the right word, I guess, brittle or on the verge of like teetering and cracking. And he nailed that. But then I treated it a little bit after to get closer to
And you
my
used
point.
a mild application of auto tune just to kind of give it a squiggle. Did you do a tiny application of auto tune, or
Here and
was that?
there.
Yeah,
Here and there.
and
He also
it's
had
very effective. This is not a judgment.
yeah,
That's a
no,
tool. The tool for
I'm
us are those very expertly applied, actually.
yeah, I'm very much a make the record you wish to make with the tools you have or any tool you want. And
Absolutely.
then
Phrase to
if
phrase, dude. Phrase to phrase. That's why
yeah,
when DAWs don't make it obvious how to just treat one tiny part of a phrase and make that non-destructible or not destructive, and you obviously have the backups and things. But I mean, you should be able to do some elaborate things to phrases. That is easier in some DAWs than others. I'm not sure which one you use, but I thought that Tamberly Come to Jesus was extremely impressive. Now, I say that as a dramatist, so I felt character in that. I didn't just feel Garrett and his blazing virtuosity and originality. I didn't just get sort of general fabulous Garrett. I got like someone. And that happens a bunch of times on this record, but it's a neat thing about that song. And I would say, and this is the vain and narcissistic part or the self seeking part, that one of the reasons it works in addition to your great insights, which we just were talking about, is that you're fairly closely following the harmony. And so I guess this is one larger point I wanted to discuss with you about the transference and interpretation of based on a work by this dude over here. And where is it good to? Is it always good to? Is it only sometimes good to? Where is it applicable? How much does one depart? How much is the degree to which something is actually based on uh, um, translate to either success, or is the freedom in that what translates to success? Do you know what I'm posing here?
yeah. I'd say that I'd say it boils down to what the point of a record is, or the point of any given record, what that record's point is. And I guess the point of this one, there's 2 points, I guess. One is to celebrate this work and have a new version of it, but also for it to be a trio record in the way that I do trio, which is influenced by so many people that are in a similar lane, the guitar, bass, drum, jazz punk kind of trio.
So what's the tradition and what's behind that idea of a trio in terms of not just timbre, but essentially orchestration, how those instruments are used to create various effects? What does trio kind of mean traditionally and now in your hands?
It means something different for someone who employs electronics and effects, particularly the way I do, which I'm not alone in doing this, but when you incorporate loops and you get to be like the guitar is its own frequency band, the bass is its own frequency band, the drums are its own attack world. And within that, that is always still going to be honored, but I can get so neck deep in the sounds and effects that the
That you're sort
traditional
of at least a 5.0 of Cream, let's say, where it was simply
yeah, right. But it's still the same. Like we have this song, but then when we depart and start rambling on within the confines of the song with the attitude that we
you guys
intended,
recorded together for a bunch of it, right? Like it's
all
all
yeah,
of it.
all of it except for the last tune. Yeah,
Where you played classical.
yeah.
Yeah, that was very effective. But what I can hear on the record, because I was pretty sure you played together in real time, and um, that I could hear you guys smiling in the room because there were some places where I could hear the record kind of smiling. Often when things were like, it was almost like one measure outside. Like there are a few measures on the record where it's like, oh, we could cut that. I mean, they were just smiling and wondering what exactly to do next. I mean, there was, and
Yeah.
but there's a bunch of really um lovely trio-ness going on in the music making. How did your bassist? We'll get to the drummer in a second, but I assume you were, well, obviously you were on cans because some of what you were doing was going through stuff, right? So you guys are recording live, but you want your bassist to hear some of the effects. Is that true?
Yeah.
At
So
least not listen to an amp in the room. And
the setup, I had guitar amp in one room, bass amp in another room, neither of which were the rooms that we recorded the drums, everything going into a can. But I also, for anything that's going into an amp, I also split the signal a DI box after the pedals before the amp. And for my guitar, I also do a DI box before my pedals so that I can add whichever effects, change whichever effects, so that I've
not to
got.
be not to be too persnickety, but did the bassist actually hear the feed from the mic that was on the amp as well?
Probably. He at the very least heard a wet signal at the end of his chain, for sure. He heard the effects he was using, whether they were coming direct from the board from the DI box or a blend of the both or just the amp. That I'm not sure, but I know that when he crunched on
So
it,
how do you
stomped on an
think that might
overdrive
have
pedal.
affected? Do you think that could have affected time? Not in a bad way. I think the record is pretty much in the pocket and a lot of
Mhm.
gorgeous sections where you guys are just jangling together. It's
Yeah.
really nice. But how do you think a bassist or a drummer hearing the sort of driving force of the music making, which would be you, pumping into them with a lot of iterations. I mean, there's the primary one, but then there's enough behind it that do you think that softened the time or changed the way you guys played together?
I've had the pleasure of recording and playing with Artie in a few different instances, a few different types of instances, and in all of them, it's like live. He used to play with this killing funk fusion band called Stig, in which he had his bass amp right behind him, and he felt every note just hitting his back, which is kind of like what bassists want to do. I've also seen him record
I
directly into cans.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've also had him record directly into cans without that, and just he tends to play as if it's there, regardless as to how he feels, and places his fingers based upon how he understands time with the drums. And sometimes that's right on the money. He's also an intuitive enough basis to understand that sometimes going a little bit after the kick makes something fatter in the best way possible and things like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I
But
heard that, I'm a bassist, right? So that's my
yeah,
original thing. I played out for 15 years and I finally just couldn't go through any more of those egg slicer turnstiles in the subway with my upright and my amp. I just couldn't do that anymore. It was
yeah,
too complicated. So I no longer play out at all, but I play on my own shit. But what I would say about him that I love is in some ways, almost rhetorically, he kind of he kind of twangs that thing in a hearty hard rock kind of way. There's a kind of emphatic, almost like he's just like his whole hand is making the note.
yeah,
Uh, but at the same time, so that's there, which is cool. And he's always serving, the harmonies you're asking for. He's always in the pocket. But then sometimes he's super adorable with the lovingness that he's doing, like quasi runs and like walking and stuff. He's like, he
yeah.
walks from time. Like, oh, he loves this shit too. He likes doing that. It's nice
Oh
to,
yeah. Well, something I love about playing with as many effects as I do, when I create a whole world of things like going on, it tends to be because I want the song or the musical moment to have a certain arc to it. And that also means that am having a volume increase, and everyone else around me who doesn't have that luxury of the effects to swim in have to dig in harder in order to make that moment in order maybe to hear themselves or to feel like they're contributing in the right way. And that's like 99.9% always what I'm aiming for. If I'm trying to make a crescendo of a moment, whether with literally a sound wall of loops, or if I'm just like trying to really add drive to everything I'm doing, I want everyone else to dig in around me. It tends to be the case. And so I think a lot on that record, he is listening to like in our cans, it's there's 80 me's just in this warbly jam man looper pedal going,
Trying to
and
say that thing,
he's
but that exact thing before. There's a lot of different iterations of you of where you're at in the tune at the
mhm,
same time.
mhm.
And so the question is like, it's a fun challenge and an interesting way to have a trio. Like, how do we take this in this sort of constant but benign swarm, of ideas and potential. You know, for instance, at the sounding, I mean, the opening of that sounding is absolutely fucking. It smacks. It is so much fun. And that is a really interesting nexus of what I intended when I wrote it for the theater and what you ended up doing with a trio. You had the same theatrical sort of uh, levity to it and humor, but very, very forthright and amusing and fun to listen to. Like there's some things like that where what we both do came together really well. Where I'd say, wow, he decided to do this song cycle and he used a trio. And I would say most of the record I feel this way about, but there are places where I could point to where if you would adhere to, let's say, a given harmony, and I don't mean just all the in-between nonsense with the chromatic shit that I do and all, who cares, but when we get to a dominant area, like where we know we have to go back to an A section,
Mhm.
like I would say 4 or 5 places, I'm like, you could have used what I did because it was kind of juicy and it would have gotten us back there because some of the cloud, the gorgeous benign swarm of your sound, some of what that can do is weaken our sense of rhetorical, like our sections and why we need to go somewhere else. So that's all I would say about listening to this. And I wanted to know how you felt about that and how deliberate some of those decisions were. And if they weren't, that's also fine, and like really curious because this is a good conversation to have.
Yeah, so I would say that and there were some moments in the studio you pointed like that's not the chord I chose. And then we looked in the book and I
Oh,
was like, my my ass works too quickly to just get the charts to the people and I missed the thing. But there are also so many like
no, but so right there,
as
let me ask you this, just first, we don't have to sit here long, but
sure.
so work quickly. So you're a sketcher outer, and you're looking for larger shapes. Is that fair to say? Is that a way to interpret what you just said?
Yeah.
Working
Yeah.
quickly to try to get it into the hands of your players, and certain actual harmonies are not going to get on the page sometimes. Whatever.
Mhm.
So that's what happened.
Sometimes. There are also other things where like a whole an example off the top of my head, Pegasus. You had a very like the whole banter between the characters eventually coming out to nada, and then you come back into the ding ding
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happens after. That's a very deliberate harmonic choice. Whereas I it's two things I'm thinking of. It's the intention, like the overall gesture of the moments in the track and what I mean for this section to do in relation to what you did and also what I'm trying to accomplish. But then also I write out the ingredients as best as or as deliberately as I mean them to. And then from there on out is how do I make the trio sound best? And sometimes that means cutting some corners or changing some things to like there might have been a couple bars in at the sounding, although I was really deliberate with that timing. But other songs like Here and Leander, there's like a bar or two of five in there. Same with Saturn Returns. That I was just like, if I get rid of that, that serves this thing grooving harder. And I did things like that here and there to service the trio being its best.
Love that. I love that. So it was around just what it felt like, just getting things to chug, getting things to move forward. Like this is a gesture that he needed for what he was doing, but I'm going to cut it because we need to get to this place for this ensemble, for this interpretation of this music. And that is again why I say you should say it's based on my work because it's also your inventions. And I'm sure that your judgments around being in a trio and how it can be the most powerful. I know that they're more expert than mine, and I also think they're beautifully demonstrated here in this record. But so I wanted to get to those decisions, and that's a really good. Do you have any other examples?
Yeah. End of Sisyphus. There's some other bars that you have, like the race you to the rock pile. By the
Yeah.
way, this if something can happen from this record. Twofold. It's to get in the hands of you, which it has, and I'm so overjoyed, but also for Mandy Patinkin to hear my version of Sisyphus. That'd be
Oh, you
great. I'd love to hear. It's like, oh yeah,
oh, wait,
I
hold on.
remember
What did I write
recording
about
that.
Sisyphus? I read something about Sisyphus.
But sorry, but the example in there is at the very end. You have some meter changes and whatnot while they're climbing up. I wanted to instead have with my with my thoughts on how I can achieve noise rock to push forward and forward and forward. If I took those melodies and just converted them to four, that way my drummer Olalu doesn't have to think about time and instead just gets to groove and build and fill and fill. And then
The
we all,
goal is rhetorically, your goal in making these changes is, or it is a rhetorical goal, it is to get
yeah,
to a dynamic sort of jagged Kilimanjaro peak that you ascend to. Is that
it's about the gesture I'm trying to accomplish with the trio and how my trio can do it best. Yeah.
interesting? Well, on just briefly on Sisyphus, that bass sound was fabulous, and it sounded like going through like electroharmonics thing from like 82, like 1982, that fat like city bass. What was that sound?
he had he had a synth pedal with him. I can't recall what it is. It looked like not a Moog, but shaped similar like the Moog pedals. But he
It
had
was
that
fat and it was
and
sort
an
of
envelope
moderate
filter.
and it didn't give a shit. I love that sound. It was like,
Yeah,
"Fuck you,
yeah,
I'm the way I sound."
yeah,
Love that.
yeah, yeah. I think the first time we talked about it, you said it was like a circus thing.
So let me say, on There's a Land, there's another circus vibe in there, right? There's one
Yes.
section full on circus. That's where I would cut a measure. There's a sort of lost, you guys smiling at each other in the studio measure in There's a Land. When you go to Circus Land, you know, where you go to that section?
The boom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You probably maybe deliver us from that by one measure, you know.
Okay. Yeah. I think, yeah, in
Play it
studio,
live.
yeah, it was if uh
It's my vanity. I'm talking about what I know. I feel like I.
yeah, yeah, and I understand I don't have to explain myself for every
Mhm.
opinion you
No,
have,
this is
but
this is really a celebration of what you've done, and to express with detail why I'm honored by it. Really,
cool,
that's what
man.
that's what I hope
But
this is feeling like to you.
yeah, but those decisions, like even in the second verse of "There's a Land," if you call it a verse, before the second time "With a Little Divide" comes up, like so, there's a series of things that happen that are different than the first verse or events
Yeah,
leading to the first
and
one.
a bit like pots and pans falling out of a closet. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they don't know, it's like townspeople or whatever chattering in a certain deliberate way, and instead it's just a guitar, bass, and drums doing it, what's the listener going to get from that? Instead of me delivering the stuff from earlier with more of an FU, you know?
You know, I have a lot of specific notes because from my last listen last night and today. But instead of asking you about those things, let me ask you first. I'm most curious about if you do this in some part of it, some proportion of it, all of it, or if you do it live, what would change based on how you sequence the record, how much material is on the record? What would the live show, if you were to do it, consist of? And if you're not planning on it, then tell me that right away, because that'll make it easier.
The goal is at least once, and not all of it would be done because I think there are songs that I wouldn't particularly do just because I like to engage an audience as long as possible, and I feel as though uh, on the stage, I would want to probably keep it as high energy with a few of the ballad pieces thrown in. Uh, but
You know
I
what
also haven't thought of,
I would also think about, can I jump in for a second?
yeah,
I
yeah,
would think about it also in terms of how cabaret works. It's an obscene form. I say this right off the bat. I feel squirmy and uncomfortable almost every time I'm in those situations. Unfortunately, I've performed in them too, and I've done my best to not make the audience squirm or whatever. But one of the things that we observed when we put a cabaret thing together, almost the primary thing in my understanding of it is density and energy. So you have a big thing and another thing that's big in a different way. And then you sort of need to give them some oral, auricular, space, and even mind space. A situation, a musical situation in which the occasional clinking of a glass reminiscent of 1957, wouldn't be such a bad thing. And because the piece is abstract, it's a song cycle, it's not a narrative. You really have a complete free hand to, if you were to do it live, I think you might consider observing at least sometimes the same principles, like the way you would set up a show. You just don't want to clobber people for too long. And so the order of things, since it's abstract, what do they fucking know? It's about music. It's what the
Yeah.
music says.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me the order.
Yeah. And hell, this is an instrumental record, but if I'm playing it live, I'm definitely giving some intros here and there and talking to the audience, in which case, am I going to do that alongside a 59-minute record, or do I cut it down? Do I cut down what I think is reasonable to do so and give them
Listen, we've
35 to
been
40
talking about
minutes?
this whole time. We've been talking about how great it is that you've taken license with this thing. What are you going to stop now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, make it a great live show. Make it . Minutes. Make it whatever you think.
Mhm.
Oh, we need to see if it could work live, but who knows?
Yeah. I just know that there are a few artists that I absolutely love that in this trio space, or even in quartets, there's some pianists that do it here, like Aaron Parks and a few others, where it's this kind of harmonic space where it's almost not to put you in a box with someone else, but in terms of ambiguity, like Wayne Shorterland, where
Movies
the
are fun for sure.
yeah, now and here's the thing. It's like, and that's what drew me to your record initially when I was younger. Like there was a two-way reaction. It was these are earworm melodies. I'm having a blast like listening to these and starting to sing along because I was a theater kid too. But the other part of the reaction was, what the hell is going on under the hood here? Like these are things that I haven't heard support these kind of
So
earworm
can
things
I ask
before.
can I ask an insinuating question, Garrett?
Sure. Yeah.
Why did you often resort to the root or a less charismatically ambiguous chord when I had provided you a perfectly good one, which was genuinely ambiguous, meaning two things are going on at the same time, fighting each other, and the ear is going, whoa, it's buoyancy. And so my question to you is when, and I brought this up before because you said I could, in the very few cases when you blew it, like you didn't take advantage of what I provided to you, you went to ambiguous, but not truly, because ambiguousness is two vital things fighting.
Yeah. Uh, I think it's in the same reason why I would copy and paste like the townsfolk thing in There's a Land. Some things in a trio setting versus a flute, a French horn, a piano, two string players, and something supporting this idea. If you play a B major seven over two things playing an F and a C in the bass, something that if you do it, yeah, but like across an orchestra, you can find
Yeah.
a way to make that kind of thing work and really serve. But if it's just a guitar, bass, and drums you're hearing here, like it doesn't like I could explain it away to you. You'd be like, yeah, but that's funky. And now we also are different listeners than I'm not gonna say we're different
Yeah,
than most
this
people,
is
but
an
we
interesting.
know the material intimately. So, but to explain away something instead of just be like, uh, some of this is also a guitar trio record. So you're gonna hear a G chord with a G in the bass. It's gonna have open strings and it's gonna sound great because harmonics rule, or overtones rule. You know?
And I need to actually fully give into the idea. This is an idiomatic thing. It has to do with what the guitar is also good at doing, that convincing at doing. Are you
Yeah.
sort of touching on that? Like it's just that's what it needed to be because this is the trio, this is the sound, and this is the instrument. Is that
Yeah.
partly?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's sure the guitar has six strings, but to say that, oh, so a six of the voices that they're using like can be used, like no,
That's
triads
not
are
enough.
triads are king often in their many forms, and I also observed
Especially
that
if you're
you
distorted.
understand that. Yeah, it's like a bass
And if
note will
you're
move
distorting
with
stuff
triad.
and things are distorted, you're hearing a lot of even more overtones in a very glorious and fun way.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what was the most fun part of the record, like in terms of groove? Like if you could actually set up some section that you did, I can think of five or six that were really fucking great. In terms of just it started just chug and you were all just doing this thing. Were there any places that could be extended in that way?
How Can I Lose You? That whole odyssey in the middle where Artie just goes on his pedal and hammers on things and tweaks knobs, and it's a sick betting to play whatever over. It was a
Yeah,
blast.
yeah.
But then you also have things like
That sounds
then
really good.
yeah, but then you have things like Icarus, where it's also open ended, but it's in a very tight A Dorian box where you just dunk, dunk for however long, you know. And I think on a record, if someone's going into a record looking for a fusion experience, then they're going to. But sometimes to give the people give them the people the point and then move on effectively, I think is also really an important thing. And obviously, there's a lot of blowing and extrapolate elaboration on this record, and some moments where it isn't done all that much. Like another one, I'll bring up Pegasus again, like the heavier moments where it's like instead of the banter leading up to that nada to send us into the head again, it was like an overdriven kind of shreddy thing that serves as a gesture to get back there. There are moments like that throughout that I would, with that trio, knowing how they lean in and chase the dragon live, would 100% leave open ending and trust my people.
You know what's
Trust.
even more clear to me just in the last half an hour of talking about this is that it's about energy that you have taken up or taken an interest in, and what that has released in you. I mean, every time it sounds really heroic and great and fun to listen to. It's when you're talking about feeling like free, just spraying out this kind of joyous, like also the competence of being where you are, just the competence. That's a deliberately utilitarian word, but you're so competent, on the instrument, and so you really do have a mastery, and you can be a master of the rhetorical stuff of when it just sprays out. Like the end of Icarus is really free and fun.
Awesome.
Um, and I love what you did with that. And I think the sooner you get to those modulations, the better, because that whole modulation section is just fun. It has some sort of squingy, sort of heartfelt thing to it.
Yeah. My trio played the things I told them to play. And I also made scratch tracks for them. Like I'm a keyboard drummer and I program a lot of things. And I sent them scratch tracks for general, it wasn't even general. They were like the songs from start to finish, but like, I love your isms. Your isms will be on the record. Here's the point I'm trying to accomplish with this particular tune. And Icarus, like Olaolu Ajibade, who you can find the drummer online as Poppy Lulu. He is the Afro-Cuban kind of pocket and just Afro pop thing that he has developed for himself. He also plays for every fusion act in the DC area. He's just
And
absolutely
I
wonderful.
lost
But
track of why you brought him up. Tell me again. I'm sorry.
well, at the end of Icarus is really where I'm getting at. Like that whole section, it's not only that there's modulations and it climbs, and I made sure it climbs with effects decisions and whatnot, but also I told him just like we've established the point here. Have fun and grow with us. And he just the hits he does, it's like it's almost more of a fun experience if you're head bobbing and letting the hits affect you in the cracks of the subdivisions of
It's
the
a
thing.
very successful thing, and it speaks to the freedom you should feel in exploiting those places where you feel that way, where it sounds like that, where it is that way. It's really great. I've been asking you all these questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Well, first one, Tina Landau. I worked with her on the SpongeBob tour that I did. I was with her in Schenectady and then Hartford, I think was the next city. So I
There's
worked with.
nothing more romantic than being with Tina Landau in Schenectady. I'll tell you that much. About it.
Anyway,
I adore Tina, and I know she adores me. And we've been searching for 25 years for the next thing we're going to do together, and or 20 years, and I know we'll find it. But anyway, we're dear friends, and she really is quite brilliant. And was so she showed up to some of the stops on the tour, and you only did two stops, or
no, she was just part of the tech process, and then she backed out, and then she went about her way, and we did 8 months of the 11 and a half on contract, and then COVID. broke out and sent us home on my 30th birthday,
Yeah.
which is wild. But yeah, so I had a couple conversations with her. One incredibly brief introductory, and then there was one where we were outside the Bushnell. I think it was the Bushnell in Hartford. We had a quick chat, and she's super fun, super kooky.
She's a
I,
brilliant, brilliant human being. She's
yeah,
incredible.
I took. She wasn't even giving it. She wasn't a music director. She wasn't telling us really what to do. But I just took a lot from her as a direct, like watching her
I mean,
direct the
Tina
cast.
wasn't the musical director, you mean?
Yeah,
Tina?
yeah, that's what I mean. Tina was not the MD.
No,
Julie
right, no,
McBride. Yeah, so
yeah.
we were getting notes from her, and maybe they were being fed from Tina, but like
Sure.
so I didn't get any of her direction, but I saw it happen, and it was like every single one of her things was go back to the whole point. What is the whole point? Now understand your role in that whole point and absolutely live that to its fullest. And like seeing her, it was like seeing a master reinforce something you've known for a while, but to see
Right.
it said in different words that just smacks you like a ton of bricks. I love that.
It's a version of another thing which is really important for us and that I try to cling to or cleave to, which is that if it moves us as individuals, it moves me or it moves you, if it moves you, it's probably going to move everyone. One must consider the personal to be the universal. Or are we supposing or positioning ourselves as somehow not human? And what other gauge and measure do we have to go by? If it moves you, it's probably going to move everyone. And pursue that. Don't pursue things that bore you. It's going to bore everyone. I think
Yeah.
that's and that's partly kind of what she was saying in a weird way. I think.
I think I heard or read somewhere that what her involvement was in myths and hymns, but just from your own mouth, what was her role in it? Just because
In
I'm
the very
curious.
beginning, she was essential because she came over one day to sort of see what I was up to and what I was writing. I said, "Yeah, I got some stuff." So she came over, and I guess we had sandwiches or whatever. She came to the end of the studio, and I said, "I have two stacks of things, two different stacks of stuff. They're not related, but whatever. One is I've been doing all these myths like Icarus, but not what you know the really really high end mythologies talk about. But I'm talking about." Supermarket checkout line. What do you know about Icarus? Oh, he's the guy who flew too close to the sun or something. That's all they know. And maybe he was too arrogant. That's all any of us knows, right? So
Mm.
I had a stack of those, um, Pegasus and the fly, the gadfly. Yeah, there's some sort of fly in that. They know. I wanted to actually just do a rubbing of what any person might know about myths and write that, not the actual one. So I had a stack of those, and then I had found this hymnal in some antique store, and it just called to me. It was just sitting there. I didn't know what was in it. And I think it was $8. I think if I can dig up the actual book, it still will say $8. In pencil, how they do in used bookstores. And it was only, I would say, it was 3 inches by 2 inches, or maybe 3.5 by 2.5. It's probably more right. And it had all the lyrics for all these Presbyterian hymns. I took it home, and within a week, I had like 4 songs. I was just, I had some lyrics to work with, and I was interested in the idea that a human being could have something mystical within him or her. And I saw these pages, these velvety old pages on this old velvety hymnal it's called the Temple Trio, and it was published in Philly, I think 1886. Just words. So Come to Jesus and a number of other ones come directly from there. I just set them to music very quickly. And those are the stacks of stuff. So Tina came over, I played these things, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, and she goes, well, have you ever thought, I think maybe they could go together? And I was like, huh. And we quickly arrived at the idea that the hymns were what we would have ourselves be, and the myths are how we actually behave.
Wow.
And that's how
Yeah.
that's how it started to mesh. And also the hymns tended to be more propulsive, and just in terms of timbre and compositional ideas, the hymns were more hymn-like, right? So it was an interesting sort of cabaret wise in terms of giving them a lot of density and then aerating it and giving them a place to rest and contemplate. The piece worked that way also, and it's a song cycle. We tried to make it into a narrative, believe me, because that's where the money is, but we couldn't and we failed. And it's a song cycle. That's all it is.
Right. But it has a very poignant theme that anyone, whether they're religious or not, would. I feel like every single person that I know that is either a self-proclaimed atheist or just doesn't care enough to follow religion is still drawn to all of the everything spiritual, whether it's hero archetypes or it's like seeing like watching a cult documentary, you know? So like it's shocking that it didn't do all that like Light in the Piazza did. But also I know that like
Are you
there's
saying it's
different
not
points.
that Nathan Hymns didn't have the kind of reaction or whatever?
Yeah, or didn't get the money that you were saying. Yeah. I
Okay.
also know.
It never would have, but also, and you are so involved in this, you probably don't even know that you are making stuff that is really, really good and specific and may stand the test of time, which is really my goal. Very happy to get well known when I'm dead,
Yeah.
or even get rich off my work when I'm dead, if that should happen. But it's not happening now. And I think both of us have already committed to the idea that you're going to do things that are not going to
Oh yeah.
just in the actuarial chart or just the basic strategy. You're never going to make money on this shit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like a profound realization I had when I started putting out more and more records in my late 20s was that I was asking myself, who are the people that inspire me and what has being inspired meant to me? And the people that inspire me the most are the ones that have, I might love one or two of their records, but they have 18 records out that span the court, and none of them are half-assed. They're all whole-assed and truly meant and heartfelt. Yeah, yeah, right. You know what I mean, though. It's like they totally like whether everything speaks with me. Like Miles Davis, love him to pieces. I like for the number of records that are out there, I like 15% of them. But that's not the point. The point is I stand in awe of this Mount Olympus that he's made for himself, you know?
Is it
And
made of? What's that Mount Olympus made of? Is it made of only the good records or all of it? I
no,
mean,
the Mount Olympus, I mean, is like I love these things of his, which is why I come to the base of the mountain anyway, and I've come to know it a little bit. But I look up at this nearly impossible record, track record of things that he makes that he stands by with two firm feet, fully believing in. And that's the stuff. There are other people, Steven Wilson, Steve Vai, Steves of my
are
life.
you making enough money from playing guitar and writing to live? I mean, I hope this comes out right. I mean, are you making enough money being a brilliant composer guitarist to live and stuff?
My money is made from being a music educator. I run the
A lot of
White
mine
Mountain
is
School of
too.
Guitar. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which like many of my like the heroes from the 70s and 80s that were oddballs that were masters of their craft, the Steve Vais, the Robert Fripps, the Brian Enos, and all of that. They were in a situation where a record label could come and pour $100,000 into them. My heroes today, the Elliot Hoffmans and whatever, they uh, have other many of them have other jobs so that the music that they pour all of their other time into can not adhere to anything that's going to yield them any money. And that's the kind of legacy that is exactly what you're talking about. I don't care about the money that I make from the art. What I care about is standing by a mountain of stuff that I believe in 110% because I didn't half-ass anything in the process. And then someone, if if one person is affected and is like, wow, someone can fully invest themselves and make this stuff that moves me. And I don't care about that record, I care about their record, but this one, I'm fixating on this one thing. That thing for me led me to chase this thing that has made me so profoundly happy and learn so much.
Yeah.
So that's me giving, it's me fulfilling what I feel is going to make me understand the most that I can and be proudest, while also giving back in a way, because I'm hoping it feeds the next person to try, and then it starts.
You know what? You know who Bob Hurwitz is? He is the he was the
Uh,
head of None Such for 30 years, and then another 5 as sort of a associate or co-head of it, and now he's stepping away. But he's been doing it for, he is None Such really. And one of the greatest things he ever said to me, because he's put out almost everything up, well, except for one or two, but records have ever been on, and or my music has been on, and he told me early on that he would rather have one person listen to a record a million times than a million people listen to a record once. And you have to combine that with the fact that he was the executive at a record company. They had obviously done well enough to keep him in his job for 35 years, right? So you see this sort of the rub of what he said against commercialism. But the underlying point to me is you make things with what he said in mind, and you hope that, because
yeah.
you want to create something you want to keep going back to. And I'm a watch collector, right? This is not a very old, but it's a 47, 48, not expensive Angelus Chronodata. And what's beautiful about it is that, this is 5 years later, and look at the symmetry of the dial. Look how pretty that is. Look how it is aged. It's again not an expensive item, but this is a beautiful example of design that lasts through the test of time. And this is a very small actual footprint. We only have this much to tell the time, do other things. There's dates on there and months and everything. But what we do is also haiku. Our job is to be good at haiku, and that's why it will last, in my view, down through because what else are we doing? We're not making scads of money. I mean, I hope you do, but I hope I do, but we're doing something more like this, and this is still beautiful.
The watchmaker that you're talking about, I'm hoping made that in hopes that he'd make money, but more importantly, because he's so enamored with the craft that he's compelled to do it in hopes that he can get the same reaction that he once got from seeing a watch that he loved.
Definitely. But what if I was like, no, he died in penury and he ate his own leg just to stay alive? It was very, no, it's a great watch, and I actually collect these. They're really good. They're really cool. No one cares about them. I love them so much.
I do have one more question, and it's under the hood. It could last a half hour. I'd like to give me as succinct an answer as possible. And it's about your harmony. It's a huge note to end on, but like,
Thanks.
when
Okay, I can do it.
yeah, and notes. Look at me saying that. Okay, so when I was at your studio with you, you said like so much of your job is like going to the piano and doing this and seeing how I feel about it, and then eventually, and then the things that stick that you like eventually become things. You said I'm horrible at rephrasing what you told me, but it was something like that. And so my question for you is, does your exploration like that tend to guide most of your harmony decisions? Or are there very specific influences, works, music literature, or concepts that guide how you explore?
No, I'm absolutely the former, but also one thing that should be included, at least as importantly as the former, is mistakes, that happenstance and unexpected misplacing of a finger here or there, or even timing something differently, or if you're playing a different instrument, anything can happen on any instrument. All of those mistakes are often the most valuable things that happen when one sits down to just sort of make sound. I mean, I think I'm very happy to say that fairly early on, I stopped sitting down to write something good. I have these, I have a keyboard, or I have a guitar, or a bass, or my mind and my voice and my whistling. I have whatever. I can't sit down to write. I sit down to sort of I'm just digging. I'm actually like a mole or something underground. That's how I feel about it. I don't base it on, and every show must invent its own sort of harmonic grammar and
Yeah.
syntax thereafter. And that should be different for every show. That's very, very important to me. And it's going to keep me alive and keep me writing into my dotage because that's harder. And I can't be doing Days of Wine and Roses again. It's all very jazzy and whatever. Not again. No, we're done with that. We got that out of our system, you know. It's time to really do something different now. And I have to. If I recline into doing the same thing again, I'm done. So it's not based on anything, and it is just I'm just a mole. I'm a rodent.
But I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm the same way. But I feel like if I'm limited by my money source telling me that, like, hey, this thing you do really sells, chase that. I've seen people whose works really inspire me be beholden to that and then make lackluster things in the same lane, and that then taints the whole mission statement of the thing because there's
Yeah.
duds that the master made. And
Well,
I
that happened, sure.
and I just well, like I just my hope is that me continuing to chase exactly what I'm deeply inspired to make and not half-assing it is going to leave the legacy I say with heavy quotations, but really the mountain that I
I want to
mentioned
support that.
earlier.
I want to support that 100% as we part here. Let me just really underline this. So let's go back to the personal is the universal. That's number one. If you're moved by something when you're playing, there's something about this you feel in your heart, like something you're doing. You found something, and then there's the thing, and then the that, and you're just like, I don't know why. It's going to be recorded. Record every last thing, but most importantly, the only way to develop who you are as a writer, which you're well on your way to doing, is to respect that and not to worry about the rest of it because of the very principle. If it moves you, you're good. Be moved.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. And record everything. And don't be such an editor until you have a bunch of stuff. When I'm in the middle of a project, I am basically living and breathing ideas about that project and almost in a granular way. And so when things come out, when I'm improvising, I'm sitting around and making sound, as I say, those sounds are going to be relevant to what I've been thinking about the whole time, right? You know, like character, this situation. I know what my tasks are going to be, but I sit down, I don't worry, I have to write this part now. That, man, it should be more fun than that. You're in the world of it, make your music, and then put it together later. That's why they call it composing and not like writing from the beginning to the end.
And that's also why I read a great article on this, but that's also why they say we're going to go see so and so play at X. When you're playing as a child, all inhibitions out the window, you're getting in the dirt and doing the thing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
the
exactly.
hope is you go see the people that you adore without inhibition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And you should be without inhibition if you can. And since you're making no money anyway, what do you have to lose? You know, that's how I see it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. What's all the second guessing you're doing when come on.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Adam, this was awesome. I appreciate you
Really fun
always.
talk. Hey, can I
Yeah.
get this recording? Can you send it to me?
Yeah, I've got it on a Google Drive. I'll send it to you.
What an
Yeah.
MP4 or whatever it is. Be great
Yeah.
to have.
I'm also talking with the person who the main audio engineer. He's working on getting a limited run of vinyl pressed. So the hope is that you'll have your hands on one of those too. So, but again,
I'm a record guy.
there we go. Okay.
Right.
Adam, this was awesome.
Love you, man. Talk
Love you
soon.
too. See you later, man. Bye.